Welcome to 221B Baker Street by way of the Southgate Bridge. I am your host, Zachary Karen, Sherlock Holmes fanatic, aficionado, Sherlockian, whatever you want to call me. And with me, as always, is everyone's favorite regular, irregular, Ken Vera.
Hi, Zach.
No, today we'll talk about the episode, of course, Art Imitates Art.
Yes. It's a case with a lot of real-life true crime references recently, so the writers had their research done on this episode for sure.
So we start right off with Joan, the big reveal that it's her half-sister.
Yes.
And she the actress does a good job. Like she's dead. Like she did not want to. The only reason she went to them in the first place, she was desperate because of what happened last episode.
Yeah. She was involved in illegal gambling, and the police were not the right option to help her. So she sought her half sister, who she's been researching about, and her half sister's brilliant detective friend. So that's where she connects with Watson, with Joan, and we talked last episode about the weird tension this actress brings to the show, where she's kind of likable but not likable at the same time. It's hard to sort of figure out, where if you like her or not like her, because I kind of feel like I like her and I don't like her at the same time.
Well, they seem to improve. Well, it's weird because she improves a lot in this episode, but it's like you said, like last episode we hate her guts. This episode we might have a little sympathy for her.
Yeah.
Because find out what happened was, because obviously we knew that Joan's father is schizophrenic and homeless. But what happened was, after he left her family, he actually started up another family.
Yes. And a family... sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, wow.
Yeah, wow. And a family he actually had time to be fathering, and which Joan feels she did not get from him. So that's really a painful situation for Joan to be in.
It's not really clear how many years, they say years, it's not clear exactly, but long enough memories of him, so that's got to be what, like 6 maybe? I would think at the very least.
Yeah, from the indications, it seems like it was just for a couple of years, because all Lynn remembers is, bouncing him on his knee, and
I guess it could be. It has to be a few at least, because she has memories, but
still more than what Joan got.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
So I can't wait to see if they have a reaction from her brother and her mother, Joan's family about this.
They'll probably save it for next season, because we have a lot of Moreland things coming up soon.
Let's hope so.
Yes.
So we go right from there to the crime. We see a woman, and she getting picked up by a rideshare. Turns out to be Zeus. Nice little reference there.
Yes, I remember that previous reference. Yes.
Apparently, the business was able to survive one of their top executive being a murderer.
Yeah, but people still use it. So here comes Phoebe, who sees that her Zeus driver is on its way, and it's a bit early. And it's a bit early because it's not her Zeus driver.
And obviously I know this doesn't really happen a lot, but I think I'm way too paranoid to use rideshare.
I'm in the same boat, Zach. I do not have those apps on my phone. I go back and forth whether I should really start using them. But
I thought about trying it once, but here's the thing: it's not like you get this. You get a different person, and you do see stuff. Obviously, it's more often than not it doesn't happen, but you do hear stuff.
Yeah, and I also sort of don't like the business style of the Uber's company owner, and so we'll see. Of course, eventually I might need it. I might be in a situation where I actually have to use it. I'm not close to that, but if I don't have to use it, I guess I don't have to use it.
Yeah, I know. So she gets shot by somebody. It turns out it wasn't her driver, because the driver's the one who found the body.
Yes.
Examining the crime scene, Sherlock's able to deduce that, well, it goes from because of the position of the body and the lack of blood spatter. It must have the shooter must have been inside the car at the time.
Yes, and we also see in the episode where after shooting Phoebe, the car travels all the way to Connecticut and gets abandoned there, complete with some window shattering. And to go from New York to Bridgeport, it's a long time. It might be an hour and a half, right?
I think it might even be longer. I'm not sure exactly where Bridgeport is. I'd have to double check.
I've taken that ride. It's
New York to
quite a long
pretty far.
time. Yeah, it's pretty far. Anyway, so we start investigating who might have done this crime, and it starts with Phoebe's brother.
And because he's got priors,
Yes.
and they start looking into it. But what I like about it, he's like, take my prints, my DNA, everything. And it's pretty. When we hear that, we're like, oh, he must not be guilty because there's no way someone who's guilty would offer up everything like that.
But we see that as a red herring as well sometimes, right?
Well, we'll talk about that when we get to it. It's almost like it was a red herring and it wasn't. It's hard. We'll talk about more when we get to that part.
Yeah.
So from there, it turns out she was caught up in the, I guess, little controversy about this art gallery thing, and it turns out that there's this art gallery who's taking people's selfie off the internet and turning them into portraits.
Yes, and that happened in real. I've read reports about this very thing.
Really, I did.
Yeah, the minute you upload something on an image in a social media platform like Instagram, basically anybody, you right now, Zach, could take pictures off Instagram and blow it up, say it's your artwork, and you don't need permission from the person who took the picture. That's what part of the terms and conditions of Instagram. So
I'm for freedom of art, but that's bull. That'd be the day. So you can just take someone's picture and do whatever you want with it.
Yep, it's reality now apparently. So Phoebe was one of those.
I love everything Sherlock says. Just oh god, you get the disdain he has for this artist is such a pretentious fop.
Yes, so Sherlock hates 1%ers and pretentious artists. we have to start a list.
Yes, indeed, and so it turns out he had already called the cops because he had a break-in.
Yes.
Oh, and this probably should be a favorite line, but he's like, so it was like, do you see art in these empty canvases? He says, one might argue there's no art even in these canvases.
Yep, that's right. It's a priceless delivery from Johnny Lee Miller. It's why I tune into this show. So yes, that was a very, very well delivered line.
So it turns out there was this like big, obviously this controversial thing, and he believes it was an artist called Gaiden. It's like, okay.
Yeah. Yes. And we get some clues on it might be this other person who did not want to be involved in this art project, and we see a clip of her and she is ranting how this is a terrible violation of her privacy.
Yeah, but it turns out the rant was just part of her performance
acting
thing.
Exercise.
And she's
so Zach is an actor.
Off.
Would you do this? They use a real life
Would I do it?
No, you harness your anger of a real life thing to help,
Oh, yes, of course. But you know what's funny? And this is so classic of, like, television, whatever.
Yeah.
This woman's a struggling artist. Look at her freaking apartment.
Maybe she's an heiress who's trying to be a struggler.
I know. And, well, it's the old thing about sitcoms and TV shows, because, you got a set so you can fit cameras and stuff in it. But let me tell you something. That apartment... A struggling actor?
Yeah.
No. In New York, that's like a $5,000 apartment.
Well, we can only hope she has 7 roommates who are helping to pay for something, or
exactly.
Perhaps. But yes, it was a pretty swanky apartment for somebody who is trying to make her name as an actress. Mm. And she has also a priceless line that she shares with Sherlock about why she's not a murderer.
What was it?
I would never kill anyone. I'm a vegan.
I'm a vegan. Yeah, that's one of my lines. Yeah, know what's interesting about this? It's just I forget the name of the movie. There was a movie Jean-Claude Van Damme did a couple years ago. It was not a good movie, but he played a villain that was a vegan. There was awesome parts where he's like, "Okay, boss, we got to get to the dock. Should we drive? No, think about your carbon footprint."
I think the writer was putting one on the audience. But Bell also does a head shake at this line. He's also, even non-verbally, he is killing it with his expressions and reactions lately.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. So it turns out she secretly took pictures of. She was gonna. I love this. She was gonna sell pictures of the pictures as pictures to make a little extra money.
Yes, but as crazy as it sounds, that turned out to be the breakthrough for the case, because her pictures are from a certain date prior to the robbery, and Sherlock notices they're not the same image that's been displayed in the gallery and what that she took previously.
So they understand that must mean something.
Yes.
Oh, we get a little moment here where Holmes asks Watson if she's distracted. She insists she isn't, but it turns out she's eating her dinner. I love the look Sherlock gives when he notices what bowl it is, but then he's like, "You're eating dinner out of this bowl we bathe Clyde in."
that's how distracted Joan is, and yeah, I mean, Joan is giving us all that reaction this whole 4 years, and it's not old. It's still funny. I still look forward to this kind of interaction between these two characters.
Now she tells Sherlock what the story is, but we don't get much of a reaction from him about it.
Yes, but even Sherlock is all. I also see some kind of subtextual, or there's a layered reaction in his facial expression when Joan is talking about how this father wasn't a father to them, and Sherlock has his own daddy issues, and I think it gets reflected in that little band back to him. So I like that it's there could be something in what Sherlock's thoughts could be hearing this story about absent fathers or fathers that have failed their children. So it's it expands the dynamics of Sherlock and Joan even more.
Indeed, and there's plenty of father references throughout the show. Sherlock almost seems like he always looks like he wants to wait for her to stop so he can get back to the case.
Yes, he's a little like, okay, you're done angsting over your dad. Okay, let's talk about the case. Yes,
but yeah, it's amazing how she's got because it is a weird feeling. It's one thing when a parent leaves and then you think, oh well, they leave because they couldn't love us, but then they loved another family.
Yes. So I think Joan has come to terms with it because I think she also knows her father has mental illness issues. But still, it can't help but hurt, I guess.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
And so we get Sherlock examining the two photos, and he notices the differences, like a car with a modified license plate.
Yep.
And there's a man taken out of the picture, and through looking at it, he believes he finds the answer to why.
Yes.
The man was taken out.
Yep. And it's this person who is already been convicted and serving time, Lewis Burnham, who claims he was at the library when the crime he was accused of happened. And this references the phenomenon, the serial podcast, where the whole alibi of the focus of the story, a man named Syed, was in the library, and somebody could verify he was in the library. And there's other references as well as we get deeper into the discussion.
There's a crime drama podcast. This sounds awesome.
Yeah, Serial was a big phenomenon maybe a year and a half ago. It's about this guy who was accused of killing his girlfriend, and how based on there's no alibi, there's no physical evidence, there's no motive. Well, there might be motive, but there's so many things, there's so many gaps in the case that they made a whole series of podcasts about it. And it was fantastic, and everybody followed it. And I think this episode is inspired by those kinds of phenomenal true crime stories we've been hearing about lately. I'll reference more later on as we discuss this.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So they go to Gregson about the case and the circumstance around how the picture seemed to exonerate him.
Yes.
And it turns I like Gregson even asked, wait a minute, because it turns out Phoebe actually testified in the case.
Yes. So these people knew each other. They traveled in the same circles. Yeah, and so Phoebe, her images were already in question about whether this man was to be convicted or not.
And so, and he makes inquiry, well, why didn't she? Because obviously she didn't know what she had. But when she on her phone, the pictures, it's obviously easy to see.
Yeah, because it's tiny on your phone, right? The image is tiny; it's not very big. But the minute it's blown up, Phoebe realizes something about her image once she sees it in a bigger framework.
Exactly.
Yes.
So now the case is not just there were still other because apparently the woman that was killed, he stalked her.
Yes.
And was obsessed with her.
Yes, and there was physical evidence.
Yes, that's exactly what there's DNA evidence that he spit.
Yes.
On the on the victim.
Yes, and so this DNA reference and what could potentially be planted DNA is a reference to a series on Netflix, a documentary series on Netflix called "Making a Murderer," and it's about this backwoods guy who was not the most savory type of person, but he was a scapegoat for a crime that he was proven to be innocent, And when he was about to sue the local government for false imprisonment, he got reaccused of murdering in a different crime. So because I think the local government didn't want to pay him out, so there's rumors that they planted DNA so they could convict him again of a different crime. So it's still unresolved to this day. So that it was again much discussed when the series was airing last year.
I've heard. Yes, I have heard about it.
Yes. So
they go to talk now. This is what I like about the character Gregson. He tells them the case system was pretty good, but just look into it, be careful, because he knows if they suspect something, they could very well be right. So I go and talk to the man, and he says, yeah, I was at the library, and that his lawyer was an idiot. His lawyer didn't believe him, and that the DNA evidence had to have been planted.
Yes.
But what I like is he fully admits, yeah, I was messed up back then, and he almost seems to say prison helped him.
Yes, because they diagnosed him while during his imprisonment, and he gets a medication for his condition. So yeah, I've been trying to look for this actor's name because I think I've seen him before, but he's not listed in the IMDb, and I don't know how else to look for his name. But I think I've seen him somewhere before.
Well, last time when I had problems, I posted in one of the elementary groups. Someone usually knows who he is.
I haven't tried.
He might. I can look at the IMDb because I would think he's up there by now, but we'll see. But he also says he saw someone arguing with Phoebe.
Yes.
And was very heated, but
during his stalking, somebody was actually arguing and left in a hurry, and there was a screaming situation.
Yes, Phoebe. And it's funny. He can, but this lawyer he said, "Didn't you tell Dave?" Yes, of course I told everybody, but no one wanted to listen.
Yep, and so in turn, he's been convicted because of the evidence presented, and the two lawyers I think were together when Sherlock met them, right? And
I believe that was the public defender and the DA.
Yes. So the opposing counsels were together in one room to meet with Sherlock, and even the defending attorney was like, yeah, I wanted him to plead out because the evidence was hard to dispute. So Sherlock gets the entire case as a result. I mean, and I think Sherlock loves reading every darn page of that report on the crime. So, and true enough, he finds reason for doubt while reading the document, which we'll get into.
Yeah, and the woman playing the DA, she's been in a few things. She's not like insane or no, but I know her. It's funny because we got two Dexter actresses in this kind of later on we get a main one, but she was no, she wasn't really reoccurring. She was just in a few episodes. She was an accused murderer in a few episodes of Dexter.
Oh, I didn't know. And Johnny Lee Miller was in Dexter for a season too. So I haven't seen Dexter, but I'm just.
No, it shows how I don't remember Johnny being in because I stopped watching Dexter after a certain season. It just lost my interest. But so I love how we find out later how important this is. She just discredits all the evidence.
Yeah.
Like they can't prove who the man in the picture is. The timing could be faked, and Sherlock is just like
Yes.
He's having none of it, which of
yes. And there's even a reference to we'll get to that later about driving somebody else's car, which is again a serial reference, planting evidence. This is all from recent discussion in the media of these true crime stories.
Yeah. So they actually talked to someone else involved in the case. She's a cop, and she's also kind of an ex-girlfriend.
Yeah.
And it's a bit of he said, she said, because she says they never dated. He just stalked her like he did. Maybe not sure it was true. And then she also testified, and she was also interested in the case.
Yeah, and she has, also turns out has lots of family who are in police enforcement that, could a conspiracy be happening to just convict that one guy who's in prison now, right? And she disputes it because she says, I'm just a state trooper who takes speeding tickets or something like that.
Right. So they're trying to, she has obvious disdain for the man.
Yes. Yeah. And we get to, in the meantime, we revisit Lynn and Joan.
Yes.
Yes. And because Joan apparently is called Lynn's mother, because of course she's curious about the background her father starting a new family, and this upsets Lynn a lot. Which, this is where it tips over to where she's kind of obnoxious because she invades Joan's life to her convenience, and when Joan wants to sort of find out something for herself, she gets pissed off. And so that's the kind of thing that, yeah, now she's annoying. Now sometimes she's, I think she's interesting. Then she becomes kind of vindictive. So I don't know where.
Funny enough,
Yeah.
Joan even admits later that she intended to tell the mother to piss her off.
Yes.
Which is something very sisterly when you think about it.
Yeah, it's why I think Joan my imagination is I'm imagining that Joan is comfortable having this new sister in her life. I don't think she's it's her father that she might have more to explore.
Well, remember, it's a news because she's only had a brother, so it's a new experience for her to have a sister.
Yep. Yeah. So that's so Joan is like she will get back to that situation later in the episode.
Yes.
Yeah. In the meantime, the car is found, right? The car that and it turns out that had the DNA of the brother based on the evidence he shared. Right? You just take my DNA, and they find a car where that shot Phoebe, and it has the brother's DNA in the car.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, get that implanted.
Yes. Go ahead.
And and so we meet the Connecticut DNA scientist played by Lauren
played by
Velez.
Dexter Act. Well, she's known for other stuff, but
Yeah,
that's why I first got introduced to her.
You-
Lauren Luna Velez is her
Yes.
real name.
I know her from Oz, so that's and funnily enough, her twin sister appeared in the season finale of Elementary. She's the maid who was trying to get in touch with Sherlock. So there you go.
What?
What?
You mean what you say? You mean the murder victim that tried to get him a case from him when he was high and stuff?
Yeah, I think that actress is Lauren Velez's twin sister. I might be wrong. I mean, I'm happily corrected in this, but I think I recall that because she looks like Lauren Velez, but it wasn't her. It might be her sister or her twin sister. So the casting director knows her job very well to cast these New York actors here.
Yes. So now, what's fascinating about this, in my opinion, is the brother says he uses his. Like they said, you were convicted of stealing cars.
Yeah.
But he says, I was convicted of stealing classic muscle cars. You're telling me I stole a new model. I forget exactly what he says, but it's a very brand new model car. He's trying to say to him, I stole cars with barely any security. You telling me I stole something top of the line?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great alibi.
Yeah,
Yes, it is. But come on.
I was also amused by his rationale. And there's also been a recent case where, in real life, where I think it was even Connecticut, if I'm not mistaken, where a lab was it turned out to be
Massachusetts.
Massachusetts, yeah, who falsified.
In fact, I was thinking about that. I'm like, oh, this happened here, and they even referenced it.
You're right.
Well, it's happened in a few places, but what happens here, which is great, is he claims the DNA evidence must have been planted, and Sherlock makes note. It's a little odd, isn't it?
Yes.
That two different suspects would say that.
Yeah.
And he said it's also odd that the car would be driven all the way back to Connecticut. But then he's like, there is a way. First he thought it might be the woman caught, but then because the only way, because apparently the spit was there was a lot of it.
Yeah, it drenched all the way down to,
I mean, that is like a pint.
Yes. Yeah, that's no mere spit at all.
That's like. But he says there is actually someone that could have fabricated the evidence, and that's where we meet the lab tech.
Yes.
Oh, and I love Sherlock's disdain for her.
Yes, because I think he's already sorted out that she is the key to solving this case because she's the one who has failed in her duties and been actually corrupt in falsifying DNA reports.
Now, well, the thing is, he's even more mad. Obviously, he's mad about that she's she's usurped the law, but he's more mad as a man of knowledge that this woman, as like he says, as a scientist, she's falsifying facts. That's very unscientific. And when you think of how ignorant that is, it's like, well, if the cops arrested him, he must be guilty. I'm going to help their case.
Yeah, I don't know. Are you familiar with the Massachusetts case? You're from Massachusetts.
I remember it. I'm somewhat familiar with. Yeah,
Yeah.
there was like
Apparently,
hundreds of cases
yeah,
that had
tens
to
of
be
thousands
re-examined.
of cases where she falsified DNA results, and that is massive and crazy. And I don't know what motivation the real life person would have, but the one here we say in the elementary episode turns out, to have very personal reasons of why this crime was. The murder of Phoebe was really just a sort of a diversion to what the real crime was going to be.
Well, what I like here is like this woman fully expects that the cops would be like, "All right,
Yeah.
good job," and they're like, "No."
Yes, and yeah, it turns out I don't know how they lead it to the wife yet. I'm not sure, but I think it was Sherlock who gave a lot of DNA samples, including my pet tortoise, to check what's on the up and up with this DNA lab, and that's where he says, they have been falsifying reports, right?
Well, it's great because I like how he says like even though there wasn't a lot of people that was complicit, but there's enough people that would have been smart enough to also know that it's impossible to get these kind of results.
Yeah.
So there are cops that even though they don't exactly know for sure, they just send work her way because they know, hey, I think this guy's guilty. She'll prove it.
Yep, but there you go. I mean, and where would if you can't rely on DNA, because DNA, it's mentioned in the episode that juries need more than just circumstantial evidence, right? So it really shatters the foundation of how to prove a crime, somebody's guilt or innocence, and that's a dangerous thing and massively shattering. So
well, it's funny because she says because like DNA is not infallible because like it's more often than not you can't go to that like DNA evidence can be like you don't get a full match. So a good it's like I say about CSI shows.
Yeah.
A good defense attorney could probably get it thrown out, but so she says that's the big reason why she falsified. But she says they try to say, oh well, you said you found this DNA and that. If it was me, why would I wouldn't report a match to myself. I wouldn't need to remove my own DNA because I'm good, but I'm not that good. That would be impossible. And she says it'd be weird if I wore a hazmat suit and to cover up DNA. So we find out she's corrupt, but not a killer.
Yes, but because things needed to be covered up, there was a cover up that needed to happen because of the falsification of the DNA. So they end up putting this man in jail just so they could, cover up the DNA false reports.
But and this is where after they don't think that she's the killer, they believe the story. Yeah. That this means that whoever did do the killing must have known about her success rate.
Yeah.
Ergo must be someone in law enforcement. So they go back and talk to the ex-girlfriend.
Yes. Who spills? It's the wife who spills everything when she's confronted.
Oh yes, it's a great point. So what happens? Well, what the patrol officer who knew, she actually suddenly. Oh, by the way, I remembered because they said, oh, maybe it was a love triangle. Maybe you were telling the truth. Because it turns out that I'm blanking on the original victim's name.
Phoebe.
No. I mean the
guy,
other
Lewis.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it turns out it's like, oh, maybe you were jealous of her. It turns out she was gay.
Yes.
Which probably obvious. But then she says, oh, I'm sure he's guilty, but on the off chance he's not. By the way, she was having an affair with a married woman, and she was asking for a divorce. And the face on the look on all their faces is like, what?
Yes. Yep. So it is. This is how advanced this show is because that they have all sorts of killers and victims, and it covers the spectrum of modern society. So, and it's surprising, but we as an audience can accept in this universe even that crimes can be perpetrated by anyone.
Oh yes.
Yeah. So good on you, Elementary.
Mm.
Yes. So and that's it's a very simple resolution actually, where she confesses, and we cut back to Joan and Lynn after that. We don't see the aftermath.
Well, the thing, we don't get to, but we get it's so they start investigating it, and they look into it. Turns out they go and confront the wife about it, and who just tells everything, because it turns out what happened in the original case, that she was having an affair with the original victim.
Yes.
And she found out. So when the wife found out, she confronted her and shot her, and she's the one that spit on her, confessed the crime.
Yes.
To her, who made it so that she sent the evidence, to that crime tech, because she knew how it would go over.
Yes.
But then Phoebe, when she found out about the picture, realized he was innocent, so she starts asking questions.
Yes.
And she tried to, when she wouldn't go away, now first they thought that but no, it turns out it was the DA that killed her.
Yeah.
And took care of it. So they're both going to jail for 2 murders.
Yes.
And corruption charges for the DA, I'm sure.
Yes.
I mean, that is layered.
Yep.
But that's why I want to say, the brother was like almost a red herring, and he wasn't, because
you're right.
I mean, because the DNA evidence, you're like, wait, it turns out the DNA evidence was falsified. That's a really interesting way to do a red herring.
Yes. So yeah, it was a fascinating case. There were many. It was not easily sort of sorted when you were watching, and it ends with a surprisingly layered, as you described, layered, complicated situation involving affairs and 2 different victims, and they even masterminded a robbery of the gallery just so they could switch the artwork. So that's a very organized criminal pursuit. So they were serious about covering up it. It's not just a spontaneous crime, as massive as it was.
Sorry, I went out for a second there.
Anyway, I was just saying that you described it perfectly. It's a very layered crime, and it was not easily apparent as viewers to know where the case was going.
No, and the funny thing is, if it hadn't been for the corruption, she might have been able to keep the kids. But obviously, with the murder, she had to go to jail.
So yeah, even that layer is added on to the entire story that we don't even get to see directly. So they built a lot of different layers just on a few short scenes and a few sets of characters. So again, from a writing perspective, it's a great achievement.
Yeah, so it was an amazing case, but then we get the scene with Lynn. Turns out she completely made up the story about her dad coming back and just completely trashing.
She made up stories again.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
But it's obvious a lot of it was from it was more of the pain from the father, because it looks like at the conclusion of this episode they're going to try to have a relationship.
Yes. So again, it expands to the larger themes of DNA. Because you're a family because of DNA, you have common DNA, but a family is also a bond, and to build it up and develop it takes some work, and you create new families out of those bonds. So even that backstory of Joan and Lynn sort of contributes to the overall theme of the episode.
Yes, it's a very good point.
Yes.
But it took me to rewatch to really understand the complexities of the case, like exactly.
Yeah,
who had done what.
I'm glad you did, because I sort of my notes didn't reflect how complex it was till you started describing it, and oh yeah, you're right. So yeah,
at first I thought the wife had killed her again, but no, it was the DA who killed her.
Yes. So yeah, there's 2 crimes. That couple is that's
screwed up.
Yeah. So it was I'm sure the writers are they take from real life cases, the writers of the show. And they try to build something similar on Sherlock, and that's in Elementary, and that's why it must be a difficult task just to keep this up for 24 episodes. At the same time, have running over the season storylines for Sherlock and Marlon, and Joan and her sister, even Belle and Gregson. So I don't know how they even begin to research and decide to get real life, because even the math things that they were discussing early in season 2 were all true. That P versus NP, that's all true stories. So they find inspirations in all sorts of places. So I enjoyed that.
And the thing is about it, what I think the core of this episode is that, well, first I found it interesting that Terry tries to take responsibility of both murders, but the core of the case itself is the corruption and it should never have happened.
Yes.
But because so many people wanted him to be guilty, he was guilty.
There you go. That's exactly the sort of the underlying emotion in this. The cases that have been in the media lately, serial, making a murderer. Both men accused were people were rushing just to get them convicted, and people just decided they were guilty, and turns out
because even with the DNA evidence, I think if they had known about her being gay, they might have looked into something and maybe to find out about the DNA at the time. But who knows? But overall, a good episode. So, what are your final thoughts on this episode?
Final thoughts is it's a well-crafted episode, interesting, and I was kept in. It was very tense for me because I didn't know how it was going to be resolved. From a simple drive-by, stand-by shooting to
parking by
to a destruction of a family because this couple needed their tracks covered, and it uncovered also a big DNA corruption case.
Yep.
So it starts from a small, what seems to be a simple crime to have many complex parts. And I enjoy that about this episode a lot. And again, I mentioned earlier, it's all about, where family begins, where it starts, how it can be destroyed, how to keep it going. And hopefully the family discussed in the next episode will be Moreland.
So, before I do my final thoughts, why don't you give your favorite lines?
My favorite line, we talked about the vegan line. That was really...
That's one of mine.
You're drinking out of the bowl for climate baths. And the other one was also, we can show you some crime scene photographs recontextualized. Yep. I didn't say that correctly, but yeah.
That's one of mine too. We'd show you the crime scene photographs, but you probably just contextualize them.
Yes.
And I almost put in the whole, one might argue, there's no art on these canvases.
Yes. So, I guess, just if you want an easy win, just give Sherlock, Johnny Lee Miller, some disdainful things to say, and he'll deliver them for you.
Okay, so you got my favorite line. So just go on my final thoughts. Very later episode. It's amazing how the art connected to the original crime and a new crime, all that fit together.
Yes.
And the story. I'm definitely interested to see where the storyline with Lynn's going to go. But overall, I'm very pleased with this episode. The layering is what makes it for me. So definitely good ratings all around.
Yes. So good episode, and I think there's only 2 more episodes left this season. So I'm greatly looking forward to resolution to some of the stories that began at the start of season 4.
Oh, one thing I forgot to mention from this episode, I love when they're investigating the case and Watson does something that I think Sherlock does to her a lot.
Which is?
She's like, "Oh, I already figured out the clue."
Yes, but I got there 20 minutes ago.
Yeah. So, but again, that's another thing. There was so much, but overall. So, I think, is there anything else you want to add?
Nope. That was a great discussion. I think I enjoyed learning, your perspective because it also sort of clarified a lot of things for me. So it was a great discussion.
All right. So it's time for us to depart, for the cane is afoot.